Today, we are going to be talking about freedom. I'm not going to be. We're going to be talking, Carl and Andy are going to be talking about the Freedom to Speak Up, which is an initiative that Greater Manchester have been running. I'm certainly not going to steal their thunder. I'll do intros in a moment, but just before we do, just to let you know, the session will be recorded, and also to let you know that there will be some conversations about bullying. So please, if you do if you are kind of sensitive to any of those conversations, then I just want to make you aware of those so that you can put some measures in place to make sure that you are supported. Today will come with an evaluation, so we can only make these things better if you kind of fill those in. So please take the time to fill out the evaluation. And later on in the session, we will also be telling you about the up and coming events, because these are certainly back and up and running. And we'll certainly welcome any opportunity to consider any ideas that you might have for lunch and learn sessions. So with no further ado, we're at 104, Carl, so the day off is definitely on the cards. It is my great pleasure, a massive thank you on behalf of the NSCC to introduce Carl and Andy from Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service, and the session is indeed yours. Thank you.
Afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this lunch and learn with myself and Andy Ellison. And just to sort of give you a current picture, I'm no longer the Freedom to Speak Up guardian as of today. Andy Ellison, Andy sort of now holds that that post. But yeah, we did start Freedom to Speak Up back in sort of 2020, 2021. But there was a process for that, and my journey in the fire service, which allowed me then, I felt, to become the Freedom to Speak Up guardian for the fire service. Did you know much about it, Catherine, until today?
Only a little bit, because I did some research knowing that this is coming up. So yeah, a little bit, but not too much.
So I mean, just about my background. So I joined the fire service back in 2001, and I was 18 at the time. And, people do question, is 18 too young to join the fire service? And it's a valid question. I was young. I was full of testosterone. I was active, and I was surrounded by, what I would define as blokes. They were big men, and I was almost like this very small fish in this very big pond. And my sort of early years in the fire service were tough. I joined on the back of Positive Action, which was off the back of the McPherson report, which sort of made amendments to the Race Relations Act around making public bodies more accountable in promoting race equalities. And that also provided fuel for skeptics around Positive Action about, why are we doing this? So, yeah, my first few years were tough around inappropriate language and stuff like that. Did I have people to speak to? Yes and no. The networks that we have today weren't quite readily available in the early parts of 2001, 2002. So I did struggle with someone to sort of vent and speak to, and my officers at the time were really struggling with how to manage this young, vibrant Carl Petch, who came in on the back of Positive Action, which was frowned upon by some people. And then what did happen, due to some issues at work, which involved some significant incidents, I was then compulsory transferred to another station to a black watch officer who they felt would be able to relate to my issues and that I could actually speak to. And at the time, I was kicking and screaming, didn't want to leave me watch, didn't want to leave me station. But when I look back, the best move that ever happened to me, having that ability to speak to someone who understood me, who got what I was saying, was such a great relief, and actually allowed me to be a better person at work and in my personal life, and I would say made me a better firefighter. And then I was able then to sort of flourish through the Fire Brigade Union. I was quickly spotted as someone who would do really well at supporting others, because I started to sort of have that feeling and want and need to sort of deal with those who couldn't speak up, who didn't feel brave enough to speak up. And within the Fire Brigade Union, I became a sectional rep for Beam. That went local, regional, and then took it to national sort of remit. But, we've all got a life outside the fire service, and that then became a priority, and I had to unfortunately step down as a union rep, but was still very active in supporting people in Manchester Fire and regionally who had issues around bullying and harassment and that kind of stuff. And we, at a time, probably around about 2020, after we had a couple of inquiries going on. So those who might be aware of the Manchester bombing in 2017, and then the public inquiry happened. And within that inquiry, we had a couple of staff who were very brave to speak up, that they felt that there was a bullying culture within Manchester Fire Service amongst management, and that people were literally scared to speak up out of fear of some kind of consequence to promotion. We also had an internal review. We called that Programme for Change, and that was a real root and branch review of our service. And you read that report, and the word bullying, harassment, toxic environment was mentioned a few times in that. And then if you read the HMI report 2018, 2019, again, we had areas of improvement in the people pillar, again, talking about the culture, and there was some mention around bullying again. So we knew we had to do something. We knew that we had issues in Manchester Fire Service that had to be addressed. And we had some senior leaders look around at different options. What is it we can bring to Manchester Fire Service that could help address some of these identified issues? And somewhere along that journey, we came across Freedom to Speak Up. And having looked at that, some of our senior managers decided we were going to trial that programme and implement that into the fire service. And for those who've not looked into what Freedom to Speak Up is, it was a recommendation after the public inquiry for, I think it was Mid Staffordshire NHS Trust. They had some issues around patient safety. Some ended up in fatal incidents, and some was just a poor care and provision at these hospitals. And during the inquiry, what they found is that a lot of the nurses and the staff were saying, I've raised this to management lots of times that we were going to have some serious incidents, and nobody was listening. So that's why Freedom to Speak Up was then brought in as an initiative. And it's not compulsory, but it's almost good practice that if you are providing a care facility, you will have this Freedom to Speak Up facility provided to your staff. So we as a fire service looked at that. We said, right, we're going to have that, but we need to have someone doing it. And it was a fair process. It went out for an advertisement. I applied for it and used my sort of experience as part of my application. And back in 2020, I was accepted to be our Freedom to Speak Up guardian. Now, at that time, we had our new Chief Fire Officer, Dave Russell, and his plan was very clear: culture, culture, culture. He was very clear that we had to do something about our culture, and he was going to put his heart and soul into improving the culture within Manchester Fire Service. And that message that he sent was absolutely critical for the success of Freedom to Speak Up, because it had to be endorsed at the top of the fire service to be given its respect and seriousness that it deserved. And not just Dave Russell, but the rest of the sort of senior leadership team and the executive leadership team all got on board with Freedom to Speak Up. So Dave Russell, so our chief, I was appointed as the Freedom to Speak Up guardian. I think it was in the November of 2020, and we wanted it up and running by April of 2021. But it was almost like giving me a blank piece of paper, because we had no other fire rescue services that we could lean on to say, well, how do we do this? How do we make this sort of care sector programme fit into the fire service? Because they're different needs. The care sector was very much focused on patient safety. So we were lucky that we had North West Ambulance Service to speak with. They were really good. They were sort of a similar service. They're responding to emergencies, and they provide a Freedom to Speak Up guardian. So they were very sort of helpful in setting it up, and also once it was set up, being a part of that journey with us. Now, the governance of Freedom to Speak Up is the National Guardian's Office. They provided me with the training. They're the ones who sort of we had to sort of report back to on statistics. But what we found very quickly is that once they gave us the training, there wasn't really a requirement for us to feed back to them, because they were only sort of interested in the care sector and what were the figures for that. But they were very helpful in just getting this off the ground. So I'd recommend that if anyone's looking to use Freedom Speak Up, speak with them. For support, you can find them on just by Googling National Guardian's Office. And then, we had North West Ambulance Service who were really helpful. We decided April was going to be the start date, but word had got out in January that we were doing this service, and we started already getting people getting in contact with me in January. So what we decided we was going to do is use those cases as a test case to see, well, how does Freedom Speak Up work? What does that journey look like from the point of someone speaking up to the point of them getting a response? And then first few months were really good. It allowed us to set up a steering group, because some of the stuff that would come in as a watch manager, it was quite easy to signpost people to the correct departments. But where there was something a lot more significant regarding bullying, then it required a more corporate sort of response. So the steering group would consist of myself, a member of the executive leadership team, the head of HR, and we had the head of internal assurance, they sort of hold the whistleblowing policy. So it was really sort of important that we had these different sort of stakeholders on board within the steering group. And again, obviously being very confidential, if required anonymous, we would discuss the case and what was the best to move forward with that. So we knew that we had a good infrastructure. We used a policy from a hospital, and then we just sort of turned that into a fire-related policy, which made it more suitable and fit for purpose. So come the 1st of April, we was in a good position. We had comms on board, which was vital. They set us up a dedicated page on our Inside GMCA website, which allowed people there to land on that page and get a bit more information. We had a video from our Chief Fire Officer discussing the importance of Freedom Speak Up and improving our culture. And then we had some other comms go out from comms just to make people aware of the service that was being launched. So come the 1st of April, we'd already had a few people speak up, and then we were good to go. My role at the time, my business as usual, was as a fire safety officer doing a staff and specialist post. So what we decided was that I would be given 1 day a week to do Freedom to Speak Up activities. But what we found is that not all speak ups come in on one day. They come in on different days. So we changed the day to hours. So we gave me some hours to work with, and them hours would just fluctuate as and when. As the work started coming in, it was quite clear from the start that bullying and harassment cases would be the sort of the bulk of the workload. We was quite clear from the start that Freedom to Speak Up isn't just an EDI initiative. It's an initiative that captures absolutely everything. So if people want to speak up about overtime, then they could use the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian to do that. And what we did was we tried to sort of make it clear as to what people spoke up about. So we put that into 3 brackets. So the first bracket was when something goes wrong, we want people to speak up, because that's how we learn. And in the fire service, we're very good at doing that already, where we have a debrief system online that allows people after an incident or after an event to go up there and upload what went well, what didn't go well, and what we're going to do next time. But when we looked at that system, what we found was that people were very good about talking about other people. So, for example, where things went wrong, we were very good at saying that it was the ambulance service's fault or the police service's fault, or the radios weren't very good. What we weren't good at was holding a mirror up to ourselves and saying, well, we went wrong. And when we looked into that, what we found is that people were too scared to speak up and take ownership of their mistakes out of fear of getting some kind of consequence from senior leaders. So where we were making mistakes, we weren't being open and honest. And over time, what we found was, if you look on our debrief system today, people are a lot more open to owning up to their mistakes. And that comes from a culture of having a chief that says, if we're open and honest about our mistakes, we'll learn from them. The second bracket which we thought was quite the most important, was if you think something's going to go wrong, we want people to speak out there and then. Because what we didn't want to see was people say, oh, do you know what? I knew that was going to happen. Especially when we started looking at mental health. We didn't want something to happen and someone say, I knew something weren't right and I wish I spoke up and said something. And not just in mental health, but in the operational world, if somebody gets injured, we want people to have had the opportunity to have been able to say something. And where we found that was the toughest, was for our new apprentices. When you first join an organisation, you're probably at the most vulnerable state. You're very less likely to say something, especially in this hierarchical system that we've got in the fire service, where your line manager, you'd expect them or think they would know better than you. So we wanted to try and give the opportunity for people, regardless of length of service, to feel comfortable speaking up to their sort of line managers if possible. And there's a time and place for speaking up, we know that, you know. And then the third area around speaking up was around, well, even if times are good, could they be improved? The fire service is really good at employing people from different backgrounds. We've all got different life experiences. You know, we've seen people join the fire service who've come from a banking background or an aviation background, and we've all got something to bring to the table. So even though we feel something's going right, you might say, do you know what, in my old industry, we did it like this, and we found out it was much more efficient to do that. So we welcome people to speak up when things go wrong, when they may go wrong, and when they're good but could be improved. We saw lots of stuff come in. So I was doing the role for just over 2 years. And in my time, we had 63 cases, of people speaking up. Some of the cases were multiple people, and some of them were individuals. And what Freedom to Speak Up guarantees, and this is the key part of Freedom to Speak Up, is that you are guaranteed to get a response. Regardless of what you raise, you will get a response. You know, you might say, for example, I want to have fluffy fire boots, for example. You'll get a response, and it might not be the response that you wanted, but that was the point of going back to the Mid Staffordshire Trust, that people were speaking out and not getting a response. So it's very important that if you are setting up the service, that really is your number one priority, that regardless of whatever they speak up about, you will provide them with a response. And we found that to be a real good selling point to Freedom to Speak Up, and probably one of the reasons of why it's been a success in Manchester Fire Service. I mentioned before that I just done 2.5 years of Freedom to Speak Up. What we agreed at the very start of all this was that to protect the mental health of the Guardian, we would try to limit that time period to 2 years, because of all those 63 cases that I dealt with, or that came to me, they pretty much were all some kind of a bad news story. It was someone having a bad day and they wanted to sort of vent and have somewhere to do that. So yeah, so to protect the mental health of myself and Andy, we're limiting that to 2 years. And that's not fixed. You know, if it's 2.5 years or if it's 1.5 years, that's down to you as an individual service. But we sort of benchmarked around about 2 years. You know, people always ask, about some of the stuff that came in. So I mentioned the bulk of the bulk was bullying and harassment. They did make up the majority of the speak ups, but we had stuff that came in around overtime, maternity leave, overtime, equipment on the fire engines. You know, it really was a good variety of work. And there would be some months where it's quiet, and then there would be times where that peaked. And then there were questions around, well, what makes stuff peak? Why is it quiet and then peaks? Is it something that's happened? But that was an answer that we just couldn't give. There was no sort of understanding as to why all of a sudden did we get a rush of people speaking up. Then we looked back at the demographics of those that spoke out. And again, there was no demographic that was disproportionate to the workforce when speaking out. You know, it was all quite relative to our workforce. So there was, and that did surprise me, if I'm honest. I did feel that I may be a barrier to people speaking out. You know, would it be the fact that we've got a male guardian would prevent some of our female staff from speaking up? But it didn't, which was pleasing to know. And it was also pleasing to understand that different parts of the organisation were speaking up. So it wasn't just predominantly grey, it wasn't just all grey book. We had some green book staff speaking up as well. And the offer was open to green book staff as well. So regardless of where you ran the service, you could speak up if you wanted to. What else that we found that worked for us as well, and I thought everyone with me, but I've not, is giving something out to people that are involved in the communication of speaking up. So we do lots of meetings and we go and speak to people. They say that the pen is mightier than the sword. Well, we got a budget and we bought loads of green pens with some information on it, and they really were a winner. I'd recommend that if you are doing the Freedom Speak Up initiative and you are going out speaking to people, just leave them a pen. As long as it's black ink, by the way. That was the selling point. It had to be black ink. But yeah, really good feedback from those that have used the service. But yeah, so my time doing Freedom to Speak Up was coming to an end, and we decided then we were going to, same process again, is running a recruitment expression of interest and see what that looks like. And what was interesting that when Andy applied for the role is that Andy is still on the fire engine, so he does the 2-2-4 rota system. And we want to know, well, what difference would that make? Would it make it easier? Would it make it harder? Or exactly the same, but just completely different? So Andy was successful at that, and Andy's now took over, and I've kind of took a step back. The transition period now, and I'll hand over to Andy in a minute, is that now that I've taken a step back, Andy's now that figurehead for Freedom to Speak Up, but I'm still there if Andy needs me for whatever. Like you said, Andy was very good at communicating at the start, and now he's grown into that role. He's able to now carry that journey forward, and then I've got a bit of a lesser role to take in Freedom to Speak Up. So I hope that what I've just spoke about just sort of gives you an idea of where Freedom to Speak Up has came from, why we as an organisation felt we needed it, and how we've installed it into Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service. And I'll bring Andy in now just to talk about his experience in becoming a Freedom to Speak Up guardian and what Freedom to Speak Up looks like moving forwards. So thank you very much. Over to you, Andy.
Hi all, thank you for inviting us to chat about our experiences for the Freedom to Speak Up. I've been in service 23 years nearly, all operational. Like Col says, it's a different dynamics from an operational firefighter taking on from a staff specialist role. I took over the role in June. Basically, my story is extremely proud to be a firefighter, especially in Greater Manchester. As we know, there's been culture issues across the brigade, across the country. And it was a bit of a sour taste that Greater Manchester was being labelled for its culture. So I thought this was a great platform for me to get involved, try and help the organisation, try and steer them in the right direction. I was very conscious of the work Carl's done. Carl's done a heck of a lot of work over the last 2.5 years. So I wanted to carry on that work. My main issue, which when I started is because Carl's staff is specialist and I'm operational, a lot of operational firefighters weren't really aware of the platform. They knew it was there, but they didn't have a full understanding of it. So I thought, right, this is my opportunity to get around stations and explain to people what the platform was. As Carl says, a lot of people thought the platform was purely for EDI, almost a corporate tool. Go on station and explain to firefighters, you can use this platform to express any issues that you wish. I always say to people, it doesn't matter what it is, we'll get an answer for you. As Carl says, you might not be the answer you want, but you'll get an answer. And usually that's enough just to calm them down a bit, improve their welfare, make them happier. It's when people, I'm a big advocate for information in education. If you explain to someone why they've done something, that's the reason behind it, they usually take that information on board. It's when you don't tell them, it's when you don't give the information, that's when the issues happen. That's when they go home at night and they invent scenarios in their head. So if you give them the information, that usually helps them. Within the awareness, as well as going around stations, currently we are trying to create a poster with a QR code on. We give the opportunity to all staff to be anonymous, because the reason people are coming to us, myself and Carl, because they don't feel they can express an issue to their line manager or their station manager, whatever it is, whether that's the embarrassment of the situation, risk of reprisals on promotion aspects, it's irrelevant. But if they come to me or Carl, it's anonymous. We don't have to give their name forward. We can keep anonymous and we can basically guide them in the right direction, almost be like a middle person between the issue of the staff member and the department which the issue is arising from. The minute we have a dedicated phone, which they can phone me on, email, or the minute we're trying to build a Microsoft form via QR code. So people can scan this QR code on the poster, they come to a Microsoft form, and from there they can raise the issue. We're hoping that'll increase the flow of speak ups, or even increase the trust that the information that they're giving is going to be anonymous. At the minute, me and Carl are trying to improve the awareness across the country. We're trying to improve a national Speak Up for Fire network. This is going to aid a lot of brigades around the country in building their freedom to speak up. As Carl said, when he started 2.5 years ago, there was a blank page. He didn't know how to go about it. We had the NHS and NWAS were helping out. But I'm sure it was very difficult for COL to start this policy off. So we're hoping with our advice, we can pass our advice forward to different brigades so they can build up this platform, freedom to speak. At the minute, got a station manager from Devon and Somerset, Steve Huntington. He's really taking a massive lead on this. He's really passionate about this. So, me and Steve are working a lot at the minute. We're finding a lot of issues at the minute that people are thinking that the freedom to speak up is more of a whistleblowing issue. When I'm speaking to brigades across the country, they come to me saying, we've got our own discipline procedures. Okay, thanks. It's not about discipline. It's about the cases might go to discipline procedures, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for help staff members bringing their cases forward. So it's not so. We're trying to get people's mindset away from the EDI and the discipline. We cover a host load of issues, promotion, operational equipment, procedures. Especially since I've taken on the role, I've noticed a lot of the speak-ups are more operationally based. I've had a couple of bullying harassments, but it's more operational promotion aspects, rather than a transfer to a station that they've had a transfer in for a number of years. In the past, they've spoken up, they've either been fobbed off with a generic answer or been ignored completely. This platform has got an answer for them. Again, it might not be the answer that they want, but they get an answer. In whole, that's improving the culture of the brigade. It's making everyone happy. Trying to build that, bridge that gap between us and them, as they say. So the operational staff and the corporate leadership team. A lot of corporate leadership team are on board. The Chief Officer has been amazing. Head of corporate support has been amazing. It's something that is working. I'm not sure if Carl agrees with me on that, but it's the culture is improving in the fire service. We're just hoping we can give advice to. We can get this network up and running and learn from each other.
Cheers, Andy. I'm not sure if Catherine is still around.
Absolutely.
Here we go.
No, absolutely. Thank you. So I am going to, what we'll do is we'll kind of pause there a little bit and just see if there's any questions that we've got. I know I've got some. Firstly, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, it's kind of, again, I think we're all really passionate about our fire and rescue services and indeed the sector, and making sure that, you know, everybody's got that opportunity to come to work, be themselves. And Carl, sounds like you've been on a super journey, and just like to say, clearly haven't knocked that enthusiasm or motivation out of you. So that's always good to know. But I will pass over to Carol, who's got her hand up. Carol, welcome.
Hi, thank you. It was really interesting to hear you speak. I actually come from a care background, so we haven't used this in an organisation I worked for, but it's really interesting. I just wanted to ask, do you think this overlaps slightly with whistleblowing? Do you ever have any speak-ups about procedures that haven't been followed or health and safety or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we have, well, I took one, so there was some overlap, and that may be because people don't know about the whistleblowing policy, or they do not even want to make themselves known to that policy either. But there were cases around fraud, there was, because at the end of the day, it's public money. So there were some, but sometimes we felt that some people made a complaint and didn't realise how serious it actually was. Right, they didn't realise that this actually sits with the whistleblowing, and that was the purpose of the steering group. Because, well, where does this complaint sit? Who is best to pick this up? There were some times where you could overlap quite a few different policies that we had, and ultimately we'd have the head of HR would say, actually, let's place this here, and for whatever reason. But yeah, it's what we've got in Manchester Fire Service, the way we're governed, we've got our fire and rescue service, but we've also got the combined authority, and we've got people who have a foot in both camps, and some that have a foot in just one camp. And the whistleblowing policy kind of sits with our GAMCA. Yeah, there are times where there is lots of overlapping, but again, that's the purpose of the steering group, to sort of unwind all that and hopefully make it a bit more clearer to what we're doing next.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sorry, there is a very fine line between whistleblowing and just a complaint. And the steering group is perfect. That's why it's good to have a steering group, really. Different experiences, different advice, so you can actually pinpoint where the issue or complaint is going to. Probably
that, because when you were talking about the like the criteria and the bit around, if you see something that you think has the potential to go wrong, even from a safety perspective, I suppose to a degree that has that overlap with kind of near miss reporting. But like you said, arguably it doesn't matter where it goes as long as it gets reported. And if people feel more kind of comfortable and confident to go to the Freedom to Speak Up group or contact, then that's, it doesn't matter, does it, as long as it gets raised, and then the panel can then direct it to the best place. So I kind of assume that's how it's been working, or that's how it works. I've got some questions.
Yeah,
sorry, go on. No, go on. Sorry.
No,
Carl.
I was just agreeing with what you just said. Yeah, like I say, it doesn't matter where it goes. I mean, we had an interesting one where somebody had raised something, and then it got sent back to them saying you put it on the wrong form. And I thought, well, really, that's not really helpful. That's not what they needed to hear. And I've always like to say just to place it somewhere else more appropriate for them.
No, that's fair. Thank you. I've got Stefan and then Maria.
Right, yeah.
Stefan.
So in Norfolk, we're really pushing the Speak Up agenda, but what we did, because some of the pressures from the HMI's cultural spotlight deadlines and things like that, we procured an external kind of existing Speak Up line. We've had about 18 reports on it already in a couple of months, but what we're finding is they're all coming through anonymously, and it's turning into a bit of a personal grudge line. So I'd really be interested in learning how you kind of sold the Speak Up thing as actually being about supporting the individual who's got the issue rather than getting other people in trouble. And it's very much more the bullying and harassment and discipline kind of thing at the moment. So it'd be really good if we could learn how to sell it to the organisation as more of a Speak Up so that we can support you.
In them circumstances, we always advise to go down the correct route, i.e. land manager, station manager. There is policy procedures in place to deal with this. If you can't go to the land manager, station manager because they are the issue, we still advise to stick to the policy procedure. It's so hopefully the outcome procedure will deal with the bullying issues. Really, if the kids come back to the same person, I'm thinking that's what you're saying. It's becoming like a witch hunt for different people. Hopefully HR will get hold of that and deal with it. All we can do is be the middle person, really, guide them in the right direction rather than giving answers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what we're probably going to be doing around our cultural work, going out and selling that actually the systems are in place. We'd much rather you just spoke to each other if you've got a problem and work your way through. But again, because ours are all coming through anonymously, we haven't got anybody to go back to have that conversation with. And I think we were expecting a spike. Hopefully it will drop off, but I think that's the danger of certainly some of the Speak Up lines, where it's not coming to someone internal until it's been processed and landed anonymously, is that it's just an easy route for people to air their grievances rather than doing it through management. So I think nationally it might be some conversation around how we best sell that and what it's all about.
And to be fair, it's okay for someone to spill their heart out on a form. It's good to get out there. It's good to get your feelings out there. And if that's what it takes, we can listen to it and advise. If they don't want it to go any further, if they are completely anonymous, well, they've got it off the chest. Sometimes that helps. Every case is individual. So,
Maria.
Hiya. So I'm from Devon, Somerset, so I know Steve as well. He's probably well known on this call. And as you said, we recently introduced Guardians into Devon and Somerset. So I guess from my perspective, and it's good to hear you're really linked in with Steve, but it's just about the evaluation that you've done of it and the ongoing evaluation to see how that's, contributing to that cultural journey that you're on and how you're kind of tackling the longer term evaluation of it at the moment.
I mean, I'll jump in there. So we've got a research officer, Emma, and what we were planning on doing. So we've not actually done a formal evaluation. We've done some informal evaluation around what the data that's came in and where that's come from. But what we've not gathered is end user evaluation. So the plan is to do a short survey to send that out, and there'll be a couple of questions on there. Have you used a service? If yes, how do you find it? If not, why not?
Why not? Yeah.
And that's down to the research officer to put those questions together, because what we're looking to do is April 2024 is have a final decision about freedom to speak up, and we can't have this final decision if we've not got a formal evaluation of that. And that's not just about end users, it's about the costings, the time it takes and stuff like that. So informally, we've done evaluation and it's saying the right things to us, but we've not got that formal one that we can really sort of use as a document to take back to the board and say, this is the overall response to freedom to speak up in Manchester Fire.
Yeah, I think we're getting, good take up from the early days that we've we've obviously started to progress with it, and there's people from our People Services department will be closer to it than me, but it'd be really good to know once you start to get that, what some of the things that come out of that might be.
Yeah, no, and hopefully if we can, we'll share that, or Andy will share that with his network, and maybe through the NFCC or sort of appropriate channels. And just to respond, sorry, to the last question around, we tackled this question around anonymous reporting. Do we advocate it or do we not? And there were some fors and there were some against. And initially, we decided that we wouldn't advocate anonymous reporting, although my 63 speak-ups, I think 3 were anonymous. A letter through the post that just turned up at my workplace. So we know that anonymous reporting can happen. It does hinder an investigation because you always want that person to speak up, don't you? But to the person who said before, I think they said they had 18 speak-ups, I think they were anonymous. The question you'd have to ask yourself, well, why are people reporting these anonymous? What is it that's really stopping them from feeling safe and confident to stand up and say, hi, I'm Carl Petch, and this is what I want to raise?
No, thank you. No, they're really good points. The bit on the evaluation, I wonder if, because I think you said it came from kind of health, so I wonder if they got any kind of questions or evaluation as well that Emma might be able to tap into, because it's sector-led improvement and all that. Be proud to borrow with pride, absolutely. I've got some questions in the sidebar. So Catherine asks, do Manchester have an independent confidential reporting line too?
That's what we're trying to set up at the minute with the QR code.
Nice, yeah.
We're finding that, I'm finding people are scared to speak up, whether that's retaliation, whether that's embarrassment, hinder their promotion. So, first of all, they've got to trust me or Carl. They've got to trust someone somewhere, or else, they keep it in-house. They've got to trust us that if they don't want to be named, they're not going to be named. But there's always so much you can do until you've got to name someone, or you've got to put details, you've got to put meat on the bone, and you've got to put that across straight away, really. But hopefully the QR code, once it's up and running, technology is getting away, that will be the confidential line.
Thank you.
And just to add to that as well, in the meantime, we have set up what's called an FRS Speak Up, which is pretty much Crime Stoppers, but for the fire service.
Right, yeah.
Andrew would probably know more about it than me and how it's all set up, but I believe it's been running for 2 months and we've had 4 people discuss something through that. Andrew?
I'm not sure of the exact numbers. Thanks, Carl. Yeah, we have called it Fire Stoppers. This is the Crime Stoppers set up. So we're treating this as in addition to freedom to speak up. So it's just another alternative route for people to, in addition to the line manager and everything else that Carl and Andy have said. It's not an instead of, but that one is anonymous and.
Is that internal and external or just internal?
You mean in terms of who rings up? Who can ring up?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm assuming it's a good question. I'm not sure whether I'm assuming it's internal, but it's however. Yeah, I'd have to get back to you on that one. I'm not sure whether it's external as well.
Thank you.
But it's the Crime Stoppers that lots of FRSs have set up. So it will have set it up in the same way as others. But I don't know the answer to that. So sorry.
No, that's fair. No, thank you. Just no. So Maggie asks, are fire and rescue services keen to push this in light of the few that have had the cultural issues highlighted in the national press? From my perspective, I think I've never seen such a national collective. Actually, no, that's a lie. Response to significant major incidents, and I see that big drive from chiefs to unite and to do something, but I've never seen such a drive to do something across like the National Fire Chiefs Council and as a group of chief officers, whether it would be to implement freedom to speak up, a kind of across all services. I think that will always be dependent on what every service thinks will suit its own individual way of working, really. So but I think what we're seeing here is I think we have to try things in order to improve our cultures and to give people the confidence. And if freedom to speak up works in one place, then for me it's worth doing. But I think it's about we've got to try something, because the culture that we've got and the confidence that we've got and needs to be improved, I think it's fair to say. And that's what Carl.
And freedom to speak up in Manchester is just one of many initiatives that the chief has brought to the table. You know, we've got peer support officers now, looking at another way of speaking of what we mentioned before about the fire stoppers, staff networks. You know, there's lots of pockets of places for people to speak up. And I go back to what I said before, probably the biggest difference at Freedom to Speak Up is it's that guaranteed response. And if I don't get a response off you, then the Freedom to Speak officer goes to their line manager. And because it's been endorsed by senior leaders, we know that there should be a response. And that's probably the biggest takeaway from Freedom to Speak Up is that guaranteed response.
Yeah, no, I do. I can't get fluffy boots out of my head, sorry, but I think it. But what it does, and I think that was really nice, that bit as well, that you said that, you know, you're not always going to like the response, but you absolutely are going to get a response back, which I think, like I said, it's really important for building people's trust, that they know that, you know, it's not just going to fall into a IT hole or a phone call hole somewhere. It's actually going to, you know, be answered. And I think that's massively important.
Yeah, and part of the training that they gave is that sometimes people will just drop you a nugget just to see what you'll do with that. And if they then trust you, then they'll come to what they really want to speak about.
Well, that's really interesting. Yeah, no, like test the water. No, yeah. Absolutely. So Lindsay from North Wales said that she was going to ask about whether or not you had the confidential line as well as the Guardians. And I think Andrea came in and said it was your fire stoppers, that's your confidential line as well. Yes, that's right. Andrea's answer. Sorry, thank you. Hannah says it feels like this does so much more than any other procedure in terms of preventing and resolving issues early on, and keeps everyone involved and supported by keeping everybody kind of updated and supported. Thank you.
Joe, just Peter. On that as well, sorry.
No, thank you.
So what we as well was very keen to do is to make sure that the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian was not a senior officer, because we felt that a lot of the policies, you know, they're headed by an area manager, a group manager, and would people see that as the person as part of the system? So we felt that the watch manager level was a good level that had some responsibility, but also had that trust. And with Andy with Andy being on the pumps and operational, he's already got that circle of trust amongst his peers that he sees on the incident ground. So I think that really works really well.
That's a really good point, isn't it? Around the level and the pitch that you're trying to get to, really. That's a really good point. Peter says, under Freedom to Speak Up, are all the conversations and correspondence confidential, kind of anonymous? But yeah, what about the confidentiality part of the kind of the conversations and the correspondence? How does that kind of work? I suppose there needs to be a point where it, like you said, more than one person would know about it.
Yeah, I mean, I know I can only talk when I was doing it, but if the person were to remain completely anonymous, then so be it. If they only wanted me to know who they were, then that's how the steering group conversation would go. We have to be mindful of anything that was sent that couldn't identify the person. So if it was an email, try to make sure that they couldn't be identified by the only person who works in that department. Record keeping was probably a point that's not been spoke about. So information governance, we're heavily involved in the setup. How are we storing information? Is it identifying people? So again, once the case is closed, it just becomes a case number, and we do keep some demographics of the person that spoke up to try and give us an idea of any trends.
Yeah.
But again, if that then identified a person, then we'd have to be mindful. So if a particular department had less than 10 females in it, we wouldn't then note that down, because I think they say less than 10 is easy to identify who that person may be. So there was some record keeping that we had to be in line with GDPR kind of stuff.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, we go on in the anonymous. Sorry, Kathleen. No, it's just, even when I have meetings with Andrea and the chief officer, names don't get mentioned, and they don't ask for names because they understand the confidentiality of it. So it is all about trust. Only it takes us one leak, and then the trust is gone. So we have to be really careful on that.
No, that's completely fair. No. Claire asks, how does the steering group work? Do you meet in person, or is it kind of an email chain, or how does it work?
Yeah, so if something comes in, sometimes it depends on the severity. It might be that I just send an email out to those on the steering group, say, listen, I need to meet in the next 2 hours at 5 o'clock. If you can come, great. If you can't, but because there are times where you need to start the process rolling straight away. Yeah. So it depends on the severity or the topic. But it's usually the same persons as well. So head of HR, head of internal insurance, and Andrea. And if one of them can't make it, then usually they don't send a representative, because then that sort of means that more people are then coming into the mix.
Yeah.
But if they feel like they have a trusted person, or that somebody has to be present, then they are there. And then the outcome of that, I would then go back, or Andy would go back to that person and say, just to let you know, it's now been picked up by so and so, who will be in touch.
Thank you.
And I think that probably works the same way now with Andy. Andy, is it still the same process?
Yeah, no, exactly the same. Exactly the same. I'll mirror what you say, really. Yeah.
No, thank you. Evie says about how does it fit in with the grievance procedure, but I think you guys have covered that you'll always kind of try to encourage people to use the procedures that you've always got in place, and not to kind of have that, if there's an opportunity to direct it down that grievance route, or then obviously you'll look to do that. I think you were saying that, wasn't you, Andy?
Yes, we'll always advise to go down the procedures. They're there for a reason. They've been assessed, and that is the policy. We don't want to jump over land managers' heads. We advise to try and keep in-house, try and deal with it, mediate the issue. If it's got to go up the line, it's got to go up to the line, but stick with the procedures.
Definitely.
Yeah, and there's a part, where sometimes, we have to sometimes be a bit flexible with these procedures and policies, and the role of the Guardian is not to sort of get involved with the sort of grievance cases and, sit in any meetings with that person as their support person. We're supposed to always be almost right down the middle, and allow the normal processes to sort of go their natural route. But again, if somebody's came to the Guardian because they trust them, they feel open to speak to them, then they may only want that person to be with them throughout that journey.
Yeah.
So there are times, I suppose, where you'd have to sort of not go against the policy, but almost come out of it a little bit to make sure that person continues to open up and support the investigation.
Yeah. Have you had cases like that where you have needed to kind of flex in order to, to get, I suppose it's the right outcome at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, and from my experience, when I sat in the meetings, I wasn't there as the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian. I was there as an employee support. Right. I'll just take one hat off and put another one on.
Yeah, so you're really clear then about your specific role within the process.
Because, like I say, the role of Freedom to Speak Up is to be sat in the middle and advocate for both sides, and not to almost fall onto the side of the person speaking up.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thank you. Judith says about the role of the Guardian being a full-time role or in addition, and I think you spoke about the hours that were allocated rather. How inconvenient, Carl, that people don't speak up on the same day. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. Even at the weekends. But so that is a question that I've done my evaluation in my role as staffing specialist, and now Andy's going to do his evaluation because, well, what is the impact on your day-to-day work? Is there enough work to make it full-time? But what pay scale does that come at? What other add-ons would have to be bolted on to make it an efficient role? So, it's hard to say, is it a full-time role? I personally would argue yes, because if you do a lot of the comms and it's not just about responding to people, it's about putting in preventive measures and making sure that the culture is set up to support, because ultimately what we would want is people to be able to speak up to the line managers in the perfect world. So I've got my sort of stance on should it be full-time, yes, and I'll see what Andy says about his, because he's obviously doing it now.
Obviously I'm operational, so when I first took on the role, I was busy trying to get my head around all the networking and the procedures and the paperwork, etc. But you could go a month where it's very quiet, and then a month where it peaks and you got a lot of work coming in. A lot of networking too. We're trying to get involved in a lot of the Enable network, the disability networks, the EDIs. So as well as the managing the speak ups, there's a lot of networking to try and get the platform out there, just to go around departments. So when you say it's a full-time job, it can
feels
be.
Like it at the moment.
it can be, yeah, it can be. I try to do a lot of work in work's time, if I'm honest, but I'm at pretty busy station, so it's not as possible. But when I took on the role, I knew it was a voluntary role. I understand what I was getting into. Slightly, I think. I'm not sure. but I understand it is what it is. I'm here to help people, not here to financially gain from it. But I think next year, 24, when we made the decision, not sure about you, Carl, full-time job, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the care sector, and obviously they're a bigger animal, but they are full-time roles within the trusts. So we know that it is a full-time role in all trusts. Where they are quiet, they will have it external. So we know that some, like for example, care homes, they might use an external company to do their freedom to speak up work, and that company might cover 5 or 6 care homes.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff. So, yeah, there's a very good conversation to be had about that.
Yeah, even if it's not just, sorry, Kathy, even if it's just a full-time role specifically for the freedom to speak up, someone in the EDI role or who's got a full-time job can add it to their role. So it's a full-time job, but along another role. Again, that's a chat we're going to have next year.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you kind of think, is there a possibility for it to be like, say, a regional role, but maybe 2 or 3 services to look at it. But I suppose what you're trying to do is you then begin to move away from actually you've got your watch manager within the service, right pitch to the right level, got the trust and confidence because you're working in and around, people, they know you, and it's that trade-off, isn't it, with the the capacity part versus the fact that people know you and they'll come to you because they trust you. Probably talk for another 2 hours just on that one. Jenny says about the measurement of the success, and I think like you said, there's going to need to be, Emma's on it, we've got her name, she's going to be the one that's doing the evaluation, and I think from the sounds of it, it'll be quite critical and pivotal to the continuation of the programme. I know that Sunny from the NSCC said once you've done that, we'll be happy to share that data and the evaluation, because I think there'll be services out there that will be really interested in how the evaluation goes. Moving down through.
Quickly on evaluation, sorry, I think, don't quote me on this now, but the HMI report 21-22, they came to our service and they said it was, I hate this word, innovative.
Yeah.
So they liked it. Well, based on what they saw, they were impressed by it. So we knew we had something, and it was always nice to get a bit of external sort of recognition.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's...
Yeah, I think HMI have just been down again this last couple of months, and culture is, obviously it's an issue at the minute, and they did comment on the Freedom to Speak Up platform. So, like Carl said, external recognition, especially from the HMI, is a big tick in the box, really.
No, absolutely. Karen says, is it primarily aimed at internal, but is it publicly accessible too, or is it just for your internal?
It's funny she's mentioned that. Greater Manchester Fire Service is under the GMCA, Greater Manchester County Authority, which is headed by the Mayor, etc. I have had a couple of speak-ups from GMCA, which we agreed initially that we were just going to keep it in-house in Greater Manchester Fire Rescue Service. I'm starting to get from GMCA now. I'm going to be networking or liaising with a representative from GMCA. So we don't want to ignore people. That's the idea of trust and trying to help them out there. How that's going to work, we're not sure yet. Whether I will be going over to GMCA and helping them or just liaising with someone from there, I'm not sure where. But yeah, the good work is spreading. So people are coming from other areas now.
I think that sounds like a full-time role.
Again,
and that's it. Yeah, that's the business case right there. If they're willing to pay half the wages or what have you, that's it's a cost exercise that someone might have to complete.
No, definitely. Kevin, I like your style. Would it be possible to share a policy, if there is one, so that he can borrow with pride? I'll let you get in touch with Kevin if that's appropriate. Jenny says, do you feel there are any barriers to being operational staff and not somebody independent?
Personally, no. I think it's a benefit rather than barriers. I remember going for the interview for this position. I don't know how many people went for it, but I did. One of my comments was, I think you should consider an operational firefighter for the role. They've got feet on the ground. They've got more, without disrespect to colleagues, staff and specialists at the minute. So it doesn't see colleagues on incident grounds, fire grounds. That's where people chat more, raise issues more while they're talking, while after incidents. I think it's a benefit that an operational personnel is in this role, personally.
Yeah, and also we looked at a Guardian and then Freedom to Speak Up Champion or Freedom to Speak Up Spock. So that gives people, staff, options. I want to speak to someone who is in this position or has this demographic. But again, this is all part of the evaluation, isn't it? Let's listen to what the users say. And if they come back saying, I wish there was someone else.
Yeah.
Carl was the barrier or Andy was the barrier. Okay, well, we'll listen to that. And if that means we have 2, then we'll have 2. But yeah, and this is why we're trialing this, and we're trying to look at different options.
I think what's really nice is your openness and recognition of the barriers, and and absolutely that it's not a personal thing. It's just sometimes just again that perception, and that's the whole kind of diversity part, isn't it? Is that sometimes and I was interested in the first part that you were talking about was about having someone that looks like you. Sometimes that is really important to have that connect. You automatically feel like you've got a connection because you see that similarity and you think, wow, they'll listen to me because ultimately we visibly look the same, or I feel that because of the affinity around operational experience, and like you said, it's all part of the evaluation, isn't it? Is to kind of look to see whether that's a positive or indeed a barrier. So we have, is it was it Julia who says, yes, Julia, Speak Up Guardian from Devon and Somerset, and would be hello, welcome. Be happy to provide some feedback. Welcome.
Yeah, I found out a bit about this 2 days ago, so sorry for not having anything beautifully prepared. Just echoing really the sort of the enthusiasm from yourselves, Andy and Carl. We've just finished our first 3 months. We've had 21 concerns raised, and the feedback that we've had has been overwhelmingly about the gratitude that this service is now here. And the vast majority of people have just said it was really helpful to speak to somebody completely independently. It wasn't HR, wasn't line management, that was able to listen to them. And in some cases, we were guiding them in the right direction, or actually advising that, yes, what they were going through is the right process and is the right way of doing things. And we started out with having 1 guardian and 2 supporting roles, but we've now got 5 of us. I'm non-operational, and we've got colleagues now, both whole-time, on-call and in control as well. So we feel that we're covering all bases. And Steve has been working really hard to sort of set up the national sort of framework. So I'm happy to share policies and procedures we've already put in place as well with anyone that's interested.
Kevin was interested. He wants to borrow with pride.
Absolutely, I'm happy to share. So we've got a confidential reporting line, like you've been saying, and we've also got an external reporting line as well. And on all of our information, we kind of go through the whole range of how to contact. So we've got the whistleblowing, the grievance, external confidential reporting line, and Speak Up Guardians. We've got bios about us on our intranet as well, so that people can get hold of us, and just that reiteration as well of the confidentiality. And I think the other thing that's come across quite well is the fact that we're that consistent point of contact for these people throughout this concern. And I think they've appreciated that, even if it's just a check-in to say, look, we've not heard any more, this is what we're doing. It's having that reassurance that you've got somebody that's sometimes outside of the main area of their concern. It's just got their back, which has been really encouraging. And I've been really grateful to take part, because it's been a good way of, myself supporting what we're doing at work as well.
Thank you, Julia. That's really, appreciate you coming in. That's
you're welcome.
Really good.
And you know what? It's really good to hear stuff like that, because when I first started it, I didn't have anyone to lean on, and you hear about this network growing, you hear these different ideas, and you think, oh, if I only had that when I started. I mean, the stuff that Julia was just saying there, I could have done with a bit of that then. So it's good that something started and it's starting to grow, and not only grow but improve as well, with different ideas. And some of them ideas wouldn't work in Manchester, but some of them would. It's about fitting into your demographics of your service. Some brigades geographically are absolutely huge and need 2 people, even if the workload's quite low. But it's really good to hear that people are starting to take on board and evolve it. And I'm sure Andy and whoever comes next will pick up these ideas and share policy, borrow with pride, as we keep on. I'm going to say take with pride.
Take with pride. All right, yeah. So is there like a national network? It's one of the questions around, is there any information? Is there kind of a national, or are we're not there yet, but is there a national network at all around the Speak Up Guardians?
We're getting there. Yeah, it's spreading the word, really. And people have heard about it, but they don't fully understand the concept or how it works. So they're dismissing it before they know about it, or they know completely about it. We'll get there. It is something we need to push and roll with. Yeah, it's just like Carl said, and Julia, you need to share the information. When Carl started, he had a massive uphill fight, and we don't want any of the brigades to have that. a lot of information out there, causing a hell of a lot of work. Let's spread it with pride.
Spread it, share it, take it.
Whatever. Yeah.
Borrow. No, I do. Do you link into Northwest Fire Control? Was a question.
I've got contacts who are on email threads, except no one's come forward from Northwest Fire Control. As far as I'm aware, Carl might answer on that. There's no barriers there, is there?
No, again, we just started it internally.
Getting that message out, isn't it?
Yeah, and they might say, do you know what? Yeah, let's include Northwest Fire Control and let's involve the CA. We include the volunteers that we have. So, maybe there is a space for control to be part of this.
Remembering at the moment, what is it, 7 hours allocated a week? Was that what it was?
That's what it was at the time. Yeah, I think it was something like
that. Yeah.
7 hours a day, I think.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Are there any more questions? Any more comments? Superb. So just to kind of wrap up, a massive thank you for Carl and Andy, and for Julia popping in there as well, and thank you to all of you for the contribution in the questions. It's been really, really kind of interesting, and the time has gone so quickly. I will just say, that probably there's never been such an important time to ensure that our services, because I think we're all here because we absolutely care passionately about our fire and rescue services. They are institutions that kind of need to continue because we do a great job to support the most vulnerable people in our communities, but ensuring that we can safeguard our staff and make sure that our services are fit for the future and here in the future is absolutely a priority. And it's only really through the work that you're doing, kind of Carl, Andy and others on the call and others across the sector that's going to help us achieve that. Carl, it seems kind of gave me like goosebumps when you said I kind of ended today, but wow, what and I'm sure you do exceptional work in your other roles, but what a legacy, not only for Greater Manchester, but what a legacy for others to kind of aspire to achieve. So a massive thank you really on behalf of the sector for what you've done, because it does sound like you've had a few barriers. And Andy, big shoes to fill, but sounds like you are you're on it and all over it and canvassing for a full-time job already. So but no, like I said, a massive thank you on behalf of National Fire Chiefs Council for coming today. It's been an absolute pleasure. More of these to come.